it's Anastasia here, and this is my midterm presentation. So, before I start, I have a quick question for you. If now there is a starship right in front of you, do you think you are able to drive it? Well, some of you may answer yes subconsciously. It's kind of weird because none of us have ever seen a real starship before, but we're all somehow familiar to it. And while literature and film provides us with rough images of starships, games actually allow us to manipulate it, to drive a starship. Although we're unable to time travel to the future, we've already been through it in games. And here comes the topic I want to talk about today: representations of futures in games. I want to start my discussion from two general and maybe kinda cliche questions. Why do we need games, and why are we imagining the future? So, why do we need games? This question has already been answered hundreds of times. According to Wikipedia, a game is a structured form of play, usually undertaken for entertainment or fun, and sometimes used as an educational tool. And MMO game pioneer Professor Richard Bartle points out four main motivations of playing games. They are achievement, immersion, competition, and cooperation. Axio designer CEO Nico Lazora also states four keys of fun: novelty, challenge, friendship, and meaning. And these answers are basically enough to summarize the meaning of games, so I'm not going to go further with it. Let's move on to the next question. Why are we imagining the future? According to biologists, what compels us to think about the future is the workings of our brain. The imaginations of future gives us a sense of what we are doing in the present, what's the impact of our generation, and what consequence our moves might cause. In a TED Talk from Anna Jane, she said that in bringing such a future to life, what was important to us was that people could actually touch, see, and feel its potential, because such an immediate and close encounter provokes people to ask the right questions. Imagining the future separates us from trivial stuffs and gives us visions on what is important to think about, what actually leaves an impact on our world. And also, touching the future we want offers us a sense that we're able to shape, to change our futures. So, after the discussions about let's not connect game and future together, and answering the next question: why do we need futures in games? First of all, setting games in the future world provides games with novelty, immersion, entertainment, and also a little bit of education, which are all essential elements of games. The unique narrative and interaction of game provides us unparalleled experience of future. I mean, who doesn't want to use a lightsaber in a Star Wars game? Or travel to different planets in No Man's Sky? Setting the game in the future is interesting, fascinating, and novel. The only thing you need to worry about is the limit of your imagination. Meanwhile, future is kinda like a fantasy, but without limitations from traditional fantasies. It's a world where you can explain every impossible thing with future development, advanced technologies, and so on, in which provides so much freedom when designing the game. For example, Overwatch has its background set in the near future, sometime around mid-2070s. We can see characters in Overwatch has fantastic weapons, such as a healing tether, hover jets, and there are characters like talking hamster and robots. And the settings make Overwatch significantly distinguished from other FPS games, which generally have modern soldiers with very realistic weapons. And moreover, Overwatch gains innovative game mechanics by offering various ways of battle in an FPS game without any like other than shooting. And game has is a medium. It also carries designers' expectations or faith about the future. Everything thousands years ago, people have been starting to imagine futures in games. One of the oldest games, Senet, which was invented by the ancient Egypt in around 3000 BCE, is a game about afterlife. Ancient Egyptians believed people's soul live after the body's death, in this two-player board game, the gameplay is regarding as the journey towards afterlife, and the challenges players made represent the struggles to obtain immortality. And remember the meaning of imagining the futures we talked about before? Games, especially video games, offers perfect simulations which can create an immersive experience of the future and helps people better imagine the future. For instance, the game Elisa discussed topics about mental health and cybersecurity. And Elisa shows us like in the future, powerful computers use artificial intelligence programs to solve patients' problems, just like act as therapists. But to make the process more human, the tech company uses real humans to speak out the thoughts from the computer. These humans are played by players who are not allowed to publish any thoughts of their own. This way of narrative provides strong feelings of powerlessness and leads people to think more about the thoughts the game wants to deliver. So, we've seen why we're representing futures in games, and I want to raise a point that we need to pay attention to these representations. Also, studying representations of futures in games can offer us new perspectives on the reality. Futures in games use extreme background settings, which may offer us perfect environment to discuss interesting topics and essential problems such as sustainability, humanity, meaning of life, development of human species, etc. Taking Death Stranding as an example, this game pictures a terrifying future where the apocalypse happened, thousands of people died, and the world totally collapsed. Internet and roads are all destroyed and people are separated. Players control the main character, who is a courier that delivers cargoes for people. Couriers are the only way to connect the United States together. In this game, players are basically just walking along all the time, which creates an extreme sense of loneliness and solitude. And by these extreme settings, Death Stranding emphasizes the importance of connect people together. And the immersive future in games gives us a sense of how the future we might cause and therefore help us understand the mission of our generation. And some games about the future can also act as materials to study specific topics. Let's talk about Cyberpunk. There are lots of interesting topics in Cyberpunk games. For example, Cyberpunk games can be used for cyber anthropology study, which is a framework for understanding the effects of objects and technology on humans and culture. For the introduction of cyber anthropology is as follows. Humans are surrounded by built objects and networks. So profoundly are humans altering their biological and physical landscapes that some have openly suggested that the proper object of anthropological study should be cyborgs rather than humans. For as Donna Haraway says, we are all cyborgs now. In Cyberpunk 2077, we can see humans using cyberwares, which are cybernetic implants, as simple tech upgrades, combat enhancement, and even fashion statements. The definition of human evolved in this world, and the relationships between technology and humor are complicated more than ever before. Cyberpunk 2077 provides an interesting context for cyber anthropology by picturing how technology will change the physiological structures of human body. Cybernetics are also related to posthumanism and transhumanism. Detroit Become Human discusses relationship between androids and humans and offers us different perspectives to consider this relationship. The way we treat cyborgs, androids, and AIs can also relate to like how players treat people that are different from them, either politically, culturally, or biologically, such as immigrants and transgenders and so on. And late capitalism is another essential point in cyberpunk games. In Cyberpunk 2077, corporations are controlling the world and most of people are leading a struggling life. Imaginations of how the future capitalist world will make us to consider the development of politics and economics in the present. However, things can get problematic As we're not from the future and our imaginations of the future can only based on our understanding of the present world. Many metaphors can be found in games, and how we view the future might also reflect our attitudes towards our present world. We've already discussed the source and we already discussed the source and impacts of techno-orientalism in Cyberpunk 2077 in class, and I also want to point out that as game setting in the future gives us a context that all present values and restraints disappear, people's decision may actually reflect their true thoughts. Elite Dangerous is a massively multiplayer space fight simulation game setting in the future. In this game, players can drive a spaceship and explore the galaxy. Astonishingly, a new kind of slavery emerged in this game. A group of players in Elite Dangerous offered new players with mining ships, training, and credits, but guided them to some inescapable region of space and forcing them to mine materials. In this way, they forced trapped new players to sell their mined materials at a price that is much lower than the market price. The appearance of this kind of new player slavery and capitalism caused by other players is very interesting for us to think about. And it's actually related to questions in culture, society, and human natures. And so, to conclude my presentation, I want to say that games and imaginations about futures are both very meaningful to us, and representing futures in games offers us great materials to study politics, culture, humanity, and society. However, we also need to pay attention to the problems that representations of future may reflect or cause, and use them as a reflection of our present society. And that's all of my presentation. Thank you for watching.